What's up, everybody? ShonnyDman here, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Talk with ShonnyDman. I have a very special guest on. Very excited to have her on. Before we get really into it, tell us, those who are watching and listening, who you are.
My name is MandaThePanda, or Amanda is my actual name. On YouTube, I like to write short stories, and then I use those short stories to tell them. I also do other gaming videos and stuff like that, but I mainly enjoyed telling short stories.
Amanda is somebody I reached out to, I believe maybe 2 weeks ago. I think it may have been longer, but I think we really didn't talk until about 2 weeks ago or so. And I usually tell everybody this at the beginning of every episode, that a lot of the people that that I have come on are people that I've never met before. These are people that it's primarily TikTok is where I've come. I think it's where I found your content page. I don't remember what you were doing, but I remember coming across it. I was like, this is an interesting person. Let me save this information for later and reach out. And so I did. And she is on, and we are going to talk about, as you saw by the thumbnail to the video, we're going to talk about creating your own story. I thought this could be a very interesting conversation. I do have some friends who are writers or aspiring to be writers. So I think this might be a very interesting episode for them to listen to as well. So as per usual, you guys, towards the end of the video, there will be a image come up where you can follow Amanda and show her support. And other than that, let us jump into it. So you create your own short stories. How long have you been doing that?
I mean, writing in general, I've been doing it since kindergarten, of course. I feel like we always had some sort of writing assignment. But I don't think I really got into writing until like high school. I enjoyed doing a little bit of poetry here and there. And then college, I'd say, is when I started actually writing and crafting what I now call a short story that's on my channels.
So really college is kind of where you really kind of ramped up the most. What was tell us about your first one that you either tell us the first one that really got it going for you, or is there like one from years back that you look back on that really inspires you to really get going?
So my very first short story, because before on my channel, I was doing different types of things, but then I decided to give the short story thing a try because it was always something I enjoyed doing in my spare time. I wrote a story called The Lighthouse Keeper, and it was one of my very first short stories, and I absolutely loved doing it. And then I saw that people were enjoying watching on the channel, and so I was like, maybe there's something here to this. And so after The Lighthouse Keeper, I just started continuing on with the short stories, and that's what I'm doing now.
Okay, so I think I checked out your link to your other content. I think that's one of the things you have on there. I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember correctly, but I remember seeing something about the story that you just mentioned.
The Lighthouse Keeper. Yeah, that was my very first short story that I posted on YouTube, and then from there I started posting more. And then about a couple months after I posted those, I decided to more or less go fully short story as my content on YouTube.
How long does it normally take you to create these short stories?
It really depends on the story and whether or not I have a source of inspiration at the time. Usually they're themed after like the months and stuff like that. Being October, I'm doing a lot of October Halloweenish kind of themed stories right now that I'm thinking about. But I definitely do think ahead for like the future and stuff like that. But how long it takes really depends, because sometimes I'll start a story one month and I won't, put it out or continue it until the next month. And sometimes it's just an idea that will sit for about a year and then finally comes out into a story form. So it really depends.
Okay. So most people get writer's block. How do you overcome? Do you get that very often? And if so, how do you overcome that?
I definitely get writer's block pretty often. In some cases, pretty often, but other times it's like it feels like ideas are just kind of like coming out. I think the best way that I've kind of learned to deal with writer's block in some ways is just like once I have a concept, just kind of like word vomiting onto the
Mhm.
page and stuff like that, just like coming up with as much as you can, even if the sentences don't necessarily feel like they fit nicely together, or if it feels like I get off track or topic. I just keep on going until I can then refine that down to something that I enjoy or something that I think looks more appealing.
Okay. How many have you created so far since you've been doing this for a couple of years now? How many is there like a
Short stories.
yeah, the short stories?
That's a good question. I guess I haven't gone back to count. I would guess it's somewhere in the 30s or 40s because
Oh,
I do one I do one every single month for my
okay.
YouTube, and then I have a Patreon where I'll do an exclusive Patreon short story. So it's about 2 months for every month for about the past year, maybe a little bit longer than the past year.
Okay. Um,
Yeah.
so because I know I've never been good because I would like write my own little stories growing up, but I was never, very good at it. Um, so is it? I'm trying to think of my wording of everything. Um, so with your short stories, um, do you kind of like every now and then? I know you say you try to like come up with the topics. Do you ever just kind of like read other stories to get in like maybe not your own stories, but maybe some people that you follow who create stories or maybe books that you've read? Do you kind of look back at those to kind of help you get in some inspiration?
In a lot of ways, in some ways, yes. I don't necessarily look back at other creators and stuff like
Hmm.
that, but I know that I take a lot of inspiration from like family members and people I've met and stuff like that, and like their stories and stuff. So my grandma shares a story when she was little and how she had this old granary at her house and how she used to how she found like a bunch of books in this old granary. And so that idea of like finding this like hidden treasure trove of like books as like a young farm girl is like the most appealing story to me right now. That it's actually something I'm working on right now. And so I take a lot of inspiration from people I know and stuff like that rather than other content creators that I don't necessarily have that connection with quite yet.
Okay. What's
Yeah.
because obviously everybody is um open to criticism
Mhm.
every now and then. Have you had any kind of not necessarily like any mean critiques, but like any insightful critiques that ended up making your short stories better?
Not necessarily. I mean, in some ways, I guess so, but for the
Mhm.
most part, my feedback that I've received from my short stories has been fairly positive.
Oh, okay.
I think the most interesting thing that I come across is the way that people interpret my stories are sometimes a little bit more up in the air because the way I see it is different than the way that they read it, and
Hmm.
that's totally like I'm definitely okay with that. Like I think you should be able to take from a story whatever you need at that time to take
Hmm.
from a story. So I think that's the most like different thing that I have faced when it comes to like putting my short stories out there.
Other than the lighthouse keeper,
Mhm.
what's another very popular short story that you've created? Because it sounds like you get a
Mhm.
lot of people like your content that you
Mhm.
put out there. So other than the one that you've mentioned before, what are some other ones that people have read that really get like the most glowing reviews?
Um, Besides the lighthouse keeper, I did one called Feathered Pen, I think it was. And it was from the perspective of like a feathered like inkwell that was being written, and the writer that the feathered inkwell is like being held by is like has like writer's block, and they don't see themselves as a good writer, but it's from the
Hmm.
perspective of the pen, I guess. And so
Okay.
people really seem to enjoy that. I also had one called Strawberry Milk that I wrote about my experiences when I was a young girl and how I used to play tea parties and stuff like that. But instead of using tea, I used to use strawberry milk as
Hmm.
the tea in the little cups.
Okay.
And people seem to really enjoy that kind of like younger kind of feeling of almost bringing back like that youth.
Right. Oh, that's pretty neat. I like that. Um, so it's since it's the month of October, I know. And
Mhm.
what other? And you usually do about one story a month.
Yeah, one story a month on YouTube. This month I did October Skies, and it was about a little witch who is looking at the sunset. Kind of think before the sunset maybe had all of its colors when sunset was kind of just like yellow. And so she's looking out at the sunset and she's thinking, the sunset could use a lot more colors. It feels like it should be more grand. And so she takes all the colors of autumn and she boils them in her cauldron, mixes them around, and then uses it to create the sunset that we now know.
Okay. Are these
Yeah.
so are these you like visually you reading the stories, or these kind of have like animation kind of style to go along with it? Or is it just like I said, you just sitting there reading the story to out to the people?
It's usually me sitting there and reading the story out to the people. There is usually some sort of B-roll kind of footage showing, but it's not necessarily animation. I don't quite have that skill set to do animation, but maybe someday.
No, I completely understand that. How long have you had your YouTube channel?
I've had it, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years, but I
Okay.
didn't start doing the short story content for until the last year, maybe 2 years at the most.
Because I know with this, I've had the channel for about I've had this YouTube channel for about probably about the same length,
Okay.
maybe a little bit, maybe a year or two longer. But
Mhm.
when I first started this, it was I didn't put much effort into it. I was just like uploading stuff
Okay.
here and there because this was just a hobby for me. But then
Right, yeah.
about 2 years ago or so, I kind of deleted everything and kind of reset it to what it is
Okay.
now,
Mhm.
because I wanted to put a little bit more effort into it, and I really enjoyed doing this. It started with video games first, but then as I kept doing it, I was like, you know what? I really want to get into a podcast idea as well, which is where Nerd Talk came into play.
Mhm.
And right, and I tell people this, whether they're watching or I mean a person, the idea behind Nerd Talk and Nerd Talk After Hours is to, because you're a nerd about you can use the term nerd to apply to almost anything nowadays. And so you can be a nerd about cooking, sewing, reading books. It doesn't matter. At least in my opinion, it falls under that category. And with this, it's the idea of, like I mentioned before we recorded, like building new friendships and new relationships with people. Because especially in today's
Okay.
world, how everything is I
Mhm.
want to use this platform and the content that I create to bring people together and make ever
Yeah.
long lasting friendships with everybody. So that's very much like I said, same time length as your channel. Um,
Mhm.
what's your Patreon? Um,
Yeah.
how many stories do you usually post on there?
So Patreon, for I have different tiers for that. So tier
Mhm.
2 and tier 3, they also get one story a month that's kind of exclusive to just that tier 2 and tier 3. So only they get to see or read the story. It's kind of the same idea. I write the story and then I record myself telling the story and then add some B-roll onto it so that it's not just me talking and reading the entire time.
So is it so do they, just make sure, do they get two?
Yep.
Because I know you do the one for the YouTube and then you have your
Yep.
Patreon. So they get more than one each month.
So yeah, so the tier 2 and tier 3 Patreons would get the YouTube story, and then they'd also get the exclusive story.
Okay. Oh, okay. Um,
Yeah.
so what's one of your most funniest stories that you've created?
I don't know. I feel like my stories aren't necessarily funny. I think I think they deal more with like emotions and
Oh,
stuff
okay.
like that. I don't know if it's necessarily funny, but I do enjoy I have different styles, and I do
Mhm.
enjoy taking almost like a children's book kind of style when it comes to writing every once in a while, because that's something that maybe I think I want to do maybe in the future is write children's books. But
Okay.
sometimes I like to take kind of like that style of like, more simple
Mhm.
writing, I guess, and more simple words rather than big, long, elaborate, long words that feel glorious and magnificent and stuff like
Right.
that. But yeah, so I enjoy doing almost like children's stories every once in a while. I feel like I really enjoy those.
So is that the next step for you, is to not necessarily stop doing the short stories, but maybe you want to evolve it into, like you mentioned, your children's books, but are you going to do a children's book and maybe a kind of like an adult style book for teenagers and adults, or are you more focused on doing kind of your children's storybook idea?
I'm mainly at the moment, it's more of an aspiration to go to for the children's book idea. I have other life paths I'm going on right now. I'm working to be a teacher, actually.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of fits in there, but children's book is maybe the aspiration. But I think for now, I'm content to kind of continue working with my Patreon and working with my YouTube channel and just kind of doing those, and maybe one day doing the children's book kind of thing.
What kind of teacher are you working on becoming?
Elementary school teacher, so kind of the younger grades.
Okay. Hey, listen, I give all respect and credit to teachers. This is my best friend's wife is a teacher, and we were just talking the other day, and she's like, yeah, pray for me because next week's Halloween, and so it's going to be very.
Yes.
And then the person I had on before you, she's also a teacher as well. So a little interesting back-to-back teacher aspiration right there. So what is I'm trying to think of my words. What are you? Sorry, you're currently in college at the moment. How much longer until you graduate?
About a year. I'll be student teaching in the spring, and then I'll be graduating.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
So not too long.
Oh yeah. So you've done short stories, and I think you mentioned that you did a little bit of poetry. What tell us about that?
I feel like that was more in my high school days when I was just kind of like learning and like exploring, and a little angsty here and there, but I feel like everyone has, at least most people have, that kind of era of like, just having all these big emotions that you're not entirely sure how to put out there. And so I ended up channeling that into angsty teen poetry.
So I know most people, when they're creating their stories, whether it's short stories or books or things like that, they kind of like visualize. So when you create a character in your short story, do you visualize yourself as the character, or do you think of somebody in your life as the character? Because like with video games at times, like for instance, Halo, for an example, you don't see Master Chief's face in the game because the idea is to think of yourself as Master Chief. So when you're creating your stories, do you usually see yourself as the character, or is it somebody personally that you crafted into the character?
For the most part, I try to see myself, but I try to keep it vague enough that that the reader could also see themselves in some aspects, if that makes sense. I mean, there are definitely situations where like I base characters off people I know and stuff like that. But for the most part, I try to make it either coming from me as Amanda or as something that's like vague enough that it could be seen and viewed different ways from the reader's perspective or the listener's perspective.
Okay. How many times does it take you to get the story that you want told written down? Like, do you have like a lot of rough drafts, or how does that look?
It really depends on the stories. Some stories, I've had the concept like, late at night, I'm laying in my bed and I'm like, this is a good idea. I like this idea. And I'll just start like writing out. I'll pull up my notes app on my phone and I'll just start typing the story out. And sometimes that's it. That ends up being like more or less the final draft of the story. But sometimes, like I said, it's a concept that happens 1 month, and then I kind of add a couple word vomits here and there to it until I have something that I can start molding and working with. So it might not be, sometimes it's a couple of months, and sometimes it's like first draft right there.
Oh, okay. So is it like, so are there moments where like you're just maybe kind of like you said, you're laying in bed, or maybe you're just doing things throughout your day where an idea like clicks in your head, or you see something that gives you inspiration, you kind of like to stop what you're doing for the most part, and kind of like
Yeah.
write it down. That way you remember it for later.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I do that quite often.
Where are some places that have given you inspiration?
I get a lot of inspiration from, I guess, like feelings or like events that are happening at the time in my life,
Mhm.
but also, of course, from like other people that are important to me in my life.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so how many stories do you have kind of that you're so you just primarily work on one story at a time. You don't work on one and then kind of like branch out. Is it just one focal story that you work on for each of the month? And that must be helpful because since you only do about 1 to 2 stories a month, depending on your, whether you're on YouTube or Patreon, you usually
Mhm.
you have like a full month to really hammer this out, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. It helps to have, I mean, like I said, sometimes I don't have anything for the month. It's like coming up into like November, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, if I don't have any ideas, I can always go back to kind of like my stockpile of like ideas I have written down in
Oh,
my notes,
okay.
like vague ideas, and I can like pull one of those and like, oh, well, maybe I can revisit this idea,
Mhm.
or, I never continue finish this one off. Let's see if I can like reread it and like rework it and stuff like that. So sometimes I have a whole month. Sometimes it's feels like a little bit less than a month, and it kind of, yeah.
So when you pull from like your stockpile of stories that you've kind of have just sitting there, is that just more, does your writer's block ever come into play right there, or is it just kind of like, well, the month's coming up and I don't really have anything set, let me just pull from here?
It's a little bit of writer's block, I guess. Like if it's like a month that doesn't necessarily have a theme that stands out to me, kind of
Hmm.
like October has, of course, the Halloween theme that stands out.
Right.
Um, so if it doesn't have like an outward theme that kind of comes to me, or if I don't have like an idea that's like, oh, I know I want to like work with this idea for November, I'll reach back into my stockpile. It's not necessarily writer's block. It's more like, what can I take out of my writer's block that I've had, and what can I like bring to life, I guess. That makes
Okay.
sense.
No, that does. Um, so obviously, have you, people go on vacations. Have have you been on vacation and seen something that really kind of like gave you an inspiration for a story? And if so, if that has happened, where was this place at?
I went to, it was a couple years back, maybe it was. I went to Florida for the first time actually,
Okay.
and I saw the sunset at Florida, and it was absolutely beautiful over the water. And so from there, I got the idea of a short story called Chasing the Sun. And it was about how we feel like we're always constantly having to chase after the sun being like this beaming spotlight on us, and how, it just sometimes we need to stop chasing the sun and realizing, was all this worth it in the end for this beaming spotlight that we feel like we need to have shining on us at all times. So that's kind of where my vacation story to Florida brought about chasing the sun.
Okay. Um,
Yeah,
are you a beach kind of person?
not necessarily. It was my first time to the beach, and it was
Okay.
nice. Lots more people than I was expecting, but I guess I should have known that.
It's okay.
I think
I'm
I'm more of
not
a
I'm
mountain
not a
kind of
beach
girl, though.
person either. So my friends always they judge me for not liking the beach. Because I went to Cuba a couple of years
Mhm.
ago, and a lot of my friends, they were excited because we were at the beach, and they were all like running on the beach and swimming in the ocean, and I'm just sitting on a chair listening. Like, to be fair, I was eavesdropping on a family because I was trying to figure out whether they were British or Canadian, and so that was my afternoon on the beach in
Mhm.
Cuba. Um,
Yeah,
and so
each their
uh,
own.
yeah, exactly. So on your Instagram, I wanted to bring this up. On your Instagram, are you into cosplay? Because I saw you have like a Spider-Man outfit on.
Yeah.
Are you into cosplay?
I'm not necessarily into cosplay. I mean, I like the idea, I like the concept. It feels like a very expensive hobby, though,
Oh,
unfortunately. And so I figured for Halloween, I might as well take, I've wanted to do something like this for a while, so I was like, you know what, let's give Spider-Man a try for this Halloween,
Right.
and we'll see how we like it. And so maybe this is the beginning of my cosplay journey, but maybe this is a one-time thing. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it looked great.
Oh, well, thank you.
And so I was just like, oh, maybe she's into cosplay too. So, and
Not
you
quite
all,
yet. Would be fun.
oh yeah, most of the people that I have communicated with and coming on as guests to do this are all pretty much cosplayers. So I will never run out of an abundance of cosplayers for Nerd Talk. But you've mentioned too that you're also into gaming.
Yeah.
What kind of games are you interested in?
I enjoy a couple more laid back games. I definitely enjoy more of the story games, which I guess makes sense with what
Yeah,
I
right.
enjoy doing.
Yeah,
Things like Stardew Valley or Skyrim and stuff like
I
that
love Skyrim.
are games that I really, really enjoy playing. And of course, I enjoy some of the Nintendo games like Pokemon and Mario and stuff like that.
Oh,
But
okay.
I think Stardew and Skyrim are the two that I play most often. And I have been playing actually on my channel. This coming November, I'll be starting up another Skyrim series. And I just finished up my first year playing Stardew Valley, finishing up the first
Oh.
year of Stardew Valley.
You
So
can never
yeah,
you can never get bored with Skyrim. And
no, you
so
cannot.
um so when
Mhm.
when I restarted the channel a while back, one of the first things I did was I Skyrim, because you have these different
Mhm.
factions. And so
Right.
instead of doing like a full playthrough of the game, this is like, it was
Mhm.
a non-commentary kind of video, which thinking back on it now, I probably should have done some commentary on it, but it was called what did I call it? Uh the Skyrim Chronicles or something like that. And what I did was I did each faction, so the companions, the thieves guild,
Yeah.
and all that. And so I made like,
Mhm.
I guess technically I made like short stories of it,
Mm.
and I kind of did first person intros to the
Yeah.
episodes of what the character's doing, and that was one of the first things that I did. But I love Skyrim. I mean, I can play Skyrim all the time and not really get bored with it.
Oh yeah.
Um, Although I'm ready for the new Elder Scrolls game to come out.
Oh yeah.
But you can never get bored with get bored with Skyrim. And then Pokemon, I grew up with Pokemon, very much loved it. I haven't really paid much attention after maybe Gen 5.
Mhm.
Me and my best friend, we did 3 videos a while back where we were Pokemon trainers and we were talking about
Mhm.
which we were going to take on the Elite Four,
Mhm.
which 6 Pokemon are we taking with us? And
Ooh.
we did the Kanto, Johto,
Mhm.
and Hoenn leagues. And so that was a very fun video to do as well.
Yeah.
Mario, I grew up with Mario, but I've never really played Mario as
Okay.
much. I am excited to see the new movie that's coming out.
Yeah.
Um, the voice acting seems fun. Jack Black does.
Oh yeah,
I think
for
he's going to
sure.
do great. A lot of people are torn between the Chris Pratt Mario. I don't know if you're a Chris Pratt, lover or not. So
It's another here or there. I mean, he's I'm
he's
not
just there.
terribly into celebrities, so he's it'll be good, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, definitely so. But yeah, so probably with the gaming. So what's your idea with your Skyrim series that you're about to start up?
Um, I haven't solidified it quite yet. I know I want to play as a Khajiit, and I
Okay.
kind of want to take on I enjoy kind of role playing in some aspects, and I feel like
Mhm.
I'm gonna take the role playing a little bit further than I usually um than I have in the past. I want to play as a Khajiit who has had their family's like restaurant or something like that like broken into by a bunch of mice. And so they're trying to make the most elaborate mouse trap in the world. So they're stealing cheese from all these other places so that they can create the ultimate mouse trap, I think is my concept for now
Oh,
that I'm going with.
That is interesting.
But
That sounds very
it might
interesting.
change, but that's what I
Right.
got right now at least.
No, that now I definitely need to check that out. And I need to listen to your short stories too while I'm at it. Because weekends I got a lot more free time because usually I work Monday through Friday and then I'm free on the weekend. So most of the time my weekends are usually consistent of working on YouTube stuff or podcast stuff. And so I definitely need to do that while I'm editing and things like that. Um, so you do that. What's your favorite character in Skyrim that you've played so far, or at least
Um,
not maybe not character, but what's your favorite kind of like archetype that you made that you really like?
I don't necessarily know if I have a favorite. I just kind of like playing or doing whatever kind of fits my mood at the point in time. I fall into the trap every single time. I always tend to go archer. I really need to
Oh,
work on
really?
not being an archer. Yeah, I have a hard time because like magic is really cool, and I'm not a two-handed weapon kind of
I'm not
girl, and
either.
I I really need to expand into doing the magic more. And maybe with this Khajiit, I guess magic doesn't necessarily fit with Khajiits, but maybe with this Khajiit, I'll end up doing
Mm.
some magic and stuff like that. But yeah, I tend to fall into the archer, unfortunately, when it comes to my Skyrim characters and weapons.
No, honestly, I'm the exact same way because I always try to maybe do a little bit more magic based, but I always end up
Um,
shield and sword kind of guy, and I was just like,
oh, okay.
it is what it is. So I mean, it's
It's just so much easier with Archer. It's like you can like hide back from the giants and shoot at people
yeah,
rather than having to run up, and my health is always so low.
exactly, yes, exactly. Um, maybe you'll not Skyrim, maybe you'll cosplay as a Khajiit or something. Get
That'd
some
be
like
cool.
yeah, get some face paint or like something like that. That'll be interesting to see as well.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think what else is there. Um, so you're short. So as we get ready to wrap up,
Okay.
your short stories overall, they always follow a theme of the month.
What was that? Sorry.
Your short stories, do they always follow a theme of the month? Like obviously it's Halloween. Yeah.
Right. They don't necessarily always follow the themes. I like to follow themes on like certain months. Like October is always kind of like a spooky, almost
Oh, okay.
Halloween theme. February kind of get more of a like a romantic Valentine's Day themed. But for other days, like other months, I guess, of the year, I don't necessarily fall into a theme like the feather pen story or like the
Mhm.
strawberry milk story don't necessarily have a fit theme to them. So it's like only specific months that kind of follow the themed concept. But for the most part, it's just kind of whatever my imagination tells me to write at the time.
Okay. Nice, nice. One thing I do wish maybe in the future,
Mhm.
now going back to Skyrim real quick, was that you can play with other people and without having to like mod it. I think that would be pretty fun to do.
I think so too.
And
Yeah.
so as we get ready to wrap up, for those who are watching on, as per usual, those who are watching on YouTube, an image should be coming up now where with all the places and social media that you can follow Manda on. But for those who are listening on podcasts, tell them where they can follow you and support you.
Sure. Well, on YouTube, I am MandaThePanda. I also have a Discord server where we're called Panda Club. There we just kind of do a little bit of chatting here and there. I'll just kind of about every day type stuff. Every once in a while, I will do like live streams and stuff like that. I did one with Stardew a couple months back, and maybe I'll be doing some more with Skyrim this coming November month. On Instagram, I'm Amanda the Rainbow Panda. I don't post on Instagram a whole lot, but every once in a while I do. So yeah, and then of course I have the Patreon where it's Amanda the Panda, and there's different tiers that you can look at depending upon how much you want to support me and how much you know
Mm-hmm.
what kind of content you're looking. If you're just looking for pictures or if you're looking for that exclusive other story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you guys heard her. You know how to follow her. So be sure to go follow her and support her. She does great work. And, it's such an honor to have her on to talk about her short stories. I thought this would be a nice little pivot from some of the things that we've talked about on with Nerd Talk these past couple of weeks. And this is episode 10. So we are 10 episodes in of Nerd Talk. So, and guys, there are a lot more things coming. So be sure you're subscribed to the channel. You can follow Nerd Talk with ShonnyDman and Nerd Talk After Hours on podcasts, on Google Podcasts and Spotify. Plenty of content coming out here in the near future as we get ready to work towards ending the 2022 year. 2023, be sure you're following and subscribe. A lot of cool stuff is coming in 2023, and I think you guys are really going to like it as well. But as per usual, thank you, Manda, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you are always welcome to come back on anytime. And we will definitely be checking out your Skyrim series as well. I'll definitely be checking that out for sure. But other than that, you guys, thank you for coming by and listening. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button, comment below, and I will see you guys in the next video. See ya.